Hi there, I'm Amanda Thomson. I'm the founder and CEO of Thomson & Scott Skinny. We're obsessed with cutting sugar and unnecessary chemicals in wine where they're not needed. Selfridges, which remains one of our most exciting customers. We were at a London food festival and it was hugely expensive for me personally as a founder, and I remember being super nervous about the spend. It was really hot, so much work, and we were selling, but I was nervous. Was it worth the X thousands that I put into this personally? And then the food buyer, the director of food then, who's a fantastic mentor in the business now, who's moved on, she came to me and she said she'd heard a bit of buzz about us and could she try? So then I'm like, yes. She was with the director of restaurants at the time. And I knew the quality was up here, but you never know. We know how people are going to find something. Loved it. And then that was the beginning of the real movement for Skinny. So as first customers go, it couldn't have got better. I was a hedonist when historically I was in the arts space, but I'd grown up no sugar. My mother was a health food entrepreneur, and over 40 years ago, way before it was fashionable, it was something that was sort of in my blood to eat in a healthy way, but occasionally, you know, want to really enjoy myself. In the days before social media, I was out interviewing celebrities in Cannes on the red carpet. Champagne was my natural thing. I loved the romance of champagne. It just made me feel good, a glass of champagne. And once I sort of worked out that in the wine space, not all wines were created equal, not just in the way they tasted, that's kind of an obvious thing, but in the way that they were adding sugar, adding chemicals, I had a bit of a light bulb moment, and I couldn't believe that this was the only business where we were legally consuming something, obviously legal medicine, foodstuffs, where the industry doesn't have to tell you what's in the bottle. And I was like, are you serious? So here's a bottle of something and I don't actually know what's in it. And of course you ask most consumers, they say, oh, it's alcohol, it's sort of grapes and alcohol. And rather than sort of going out to destroy the mystique of something I love, I figured that there was potentially going to be a brand for people like me who wanted to drink a glass of something quite delicious, but know exactly what they were drinking and know that potentially in the morning they might not feel so awful because they'd drunk a whole load of sugar and a whole load of chemicals that they wouldn't necessarily be able to identify. So I figured if I could create a brand based on brilliant tasting bottles, bring the party to the table, but be super transparent as to what I was putting into my bottles, I might be onto something. And that was my light bulb moment. I'd have huge, exciting, innovative, dynamic people working with me all around the world, cutting sugar one bottle at a time. I'd be doing essentially what I'm doing now, just growing a fantastic team. Time really is the issue, actually. So I would have a lot more people, a lot more money, and be able to just spread the word a lot faster. And just say to people, you know, you can drink fantastic wine, but you don't need all the crap that's in there, you know. Compromise, I think every entrepreneur will tell you, everything's a compromise. Compromise between making sure we really win our home market, which is hugely important, obviously. The UK, whatever happens with Brexit, whatever goes on, I live in the UK, we're a London-based company, so making sure we really protect and grow our home market, making sure our there you go, that's the second thing. US expansion doesn't happen at the expense of winning the home market, because I've just put the T's out there, but we're doing a lot with the US. We've got our sights set on some quite exciting development over there, as well as other international territories. So it's that compromise between making sure that we've got our roots here, but really looking at all of those incredible international opportunities at the same time. So which goes back to not being enough hours in the day. I know what's going to happen. I know that we're at the forefront of shaking it up, and I don't say that arrogantly. I say that knowing that I sat with the captains of industry in a meeting earlier, and this person said to me, and I was like, yes, she said, we've just looked at a huge Gallup poll of many hundreds of people and cutting sugar in drinks. But is this key sort of trend? So I know for a fact, if you look at every single brand across the soft drinks and alcohol space, transparency is right at the forefront, which is brilliant for me, because rather than feeling that is a threat to us, I really want to work on that and just say to other brands, you know, when you're making incredible wine, let's be very open about the fact that it's made in a natural way, you know, because still, if you look at different territories, organic, biodynamic, there's so many confusing terms, and people can't always be honest about what's in their bottle, and it's not always even their fault. There's a lot of complications with legislation around labelling, so I'll be delighted if anyone wants to copy that policy, because that's what I'm here for, really, to actually get sugar and get nasty chemicals out of alcohol so we can still enjoy the occasional glass, because let's be honest, we don't need alcohol in our lives, right? So my angle is, you know, if you're not going to drink alcohol, which a lot of smart young people are choosing not to, brilliant, don't drink it. If you're going to drink it, drink something that tastes incredible and doesn't have a ton of crap in it. I mean, it's not brain surgery. I think by sheer obsessive persuasion. Passion comes across, doesn't it? We've all met people in business who are in business who don't love it, and I know we can't all love everything, but I think if you're going to be a founder, you're going to live and breathe something, you have to be obsessed about it, and I think passion, luckily, touch wood, spreads. That's a question for a therapist. I always think I'd love to have one. I've got New York friends who say, have you got a therapist? I say, no, I'd love one. Yes, I think you can. I am. Obviously, there's caveats. Also, with being an entrepreneur, you tend to be pretty glass half full. Otherwise, how would you ever start and how would you ever maintain that drive? So, yeah, I think you can. I mean, it's that whole sort of fashionable question about having it all, isn't it? I think it's whatever your version of all is. There's a huge list of hard things. I listen to podcasts with other entrepreneurs, and it's amazing how much resonate. Whenever I meet a founder entrepreneur, you just get on, because you're you know, on the one hand, you're presenting this sort of fun. I'm in the glamorous business, it's champagne. I'm drinking champagne all the time. You know, I've probably drunk a lot more champagne way before I was in the business, because now I'm selling it. It's retaining that sense of game face, of positivity, of always looking forward, and actually finding a way to train your brain to actually get over the obstacles which are constantly in your way. Surround yourself with positive people. I find negativity probably the most draining thing. So if I'm around people who are constantly saying no or constantly not wanting to innovate, if you're around that too long, it can really bring you down. So I would say getting out of bed every morning is the hardest thing. Sometimes, even when the chips are down, knowing that you've got to flick that metaphorical switch in your head and go, okay, it's a new day, get out and sell. And I think we can all take inspiration from Americans and the way they sort of present business, because I think that whole American thing, which us Brits aren't, we're not necessarily so good at, we like to wallow, don't we? But that can be useful, because as soon as you've made yourself smile and get out there, you're sort of halfway there, I guess, aren't you? So retaining constant positivity is mentally draining, I suppose. I read voraciously, but mostly non-fiction. I find business books really useful, because I think when you're going through the pain, it's useful to share that pain and recognise also that when you read stories about business leaders and entrepreneurs who've got to what is potentially the next level of success as you see it, because I think that's another thing that most entrepreneurs are bad at, is recognising even the small success moments. You can then kind of go, oh yeah, okay, well they went through that, and then they got there. So it can be, I think, really inspiring to read those sorts of books and listen to those sorts of podcasts. But I think people don't always share enough of the pain and the loneliness. It's super lonely. I mean, the co-founder's my husband, and he's brilliant, but ultimately he's got his own things he's doing. And I think your team, I've got a brilliant team, but technically it's your child, isn't it? And I've got 2 real children, then this business is my 3rd. It's quite a lonely place, because a lot of the wrangling you just have to do mentally yourself, because no one's going to want it as much as you do. No, and when I speak to fellow entrepreneurs, I think often when they look back with hindsight, I've spoken to hugely successful people, celebrate the small stuff. And I always go, yeah, I should do that. I mean, I think if you've got a huge vision, it's hard mentally to think about having sometimes the time to do that, because you're always so obsessed with the next thing. So Yeah, I don't know what the balance is there. I'll be one of those people when I get there, wherever there is. I don't know if there exists. Go, yeah, I wish I'd celebrated that. I think that's a really common thing. I don't know how you get around it, because I think if I started to drink champagne and celebrate, I'd be taking my eye off the ball with all the problems I've got to deal with. I'm obsessed with my vision. I want every single wine brand to be much more open about what we're all drinking. And I want us all to be able to enjoy alcohol in a much more mindful way. When I say mindful, I know that can be a little holy, so I don't mean it. I'm bringing the party, right? I mean, occasionally people say, oh, are you doing non-alcohol? Are you doing low alcohol? No, I'm in the alcohol space, so there's no secrets. That's why I say drink, don't drink. But if you're going to drink something like mine, where I'm taking the nasty things out, but it's still alcohol. Looking at the trickle-down effect, you know, the fact that my business was considered so radical, even if I sat here with you a year ago, potentially, a lot of people would just say, oh gosh, Amanda's got this little marketing idea and she sort of wants to cut sugar in wine and she wants to take the chemicals out and tell you, you know. I mean, still now I get that from a lot of the business. It's a massively traditional business, which ironically I would say has been useful to me. My vision is that every single wine brand is much more honest about what we're drinking, and not to destroy the mystique of an industry I love, but just to cut some of the crap out of it and to say, let's enjoy alcohol in the right way and let's not have a ton of nasty chemicals in there while we're doing it. And all the sugar, have sugar when you want to enjoy it, in pastry, in a specific way, rather than drinking sugar and chemicals when they're disguised as something else, which I think we'll look back on and think is pretty outrageous. I do aim for 7. Obviously, it's hard in the modern world for anyone, let alone an entrepreneur, to always get regular sleep, but I do aim for that. I'm doing a lot of international travel, so I find that that can be tricky. I'm not a big fan of jet lag. I do suffer from it. Of course, as an entrepreneur, I'm often straight off a plane, have a quick shower, straight to a meeting. So what I'm trying to do in that situation is set my body clock to the time, you know, whatever, but you still end up with jet lag. I try to be relative. I'm in the champagne space, sparkling wine, Prosecco. Normally, nobody dies. And if I look back and think about the problems I faced in business and got over, I'm a massive fan of relativity, which drives my kids mad. But I think we all know, if we switch on the news literally on a daily basis, there are real horrendous problems out there. So whichever, I try and remind myself, you know, actually often before I go to sleep, no one is dying in my business. And so relativity for me is massively important. So that helps me sleep. So I'm mostly at work. I believe in theory in work-life balance. I think for entrepreneurs with vision it's really hard. So I believe in it conceptually for other people, but I'm not very good at doing it. I don't have really a social life now. Luckily, I'm old enough to still have long-term friends, because I'd be struggling if I was young and trying to make new ones, because I think friends and family have to be very forgiving because they don't see a lot of you. I try and get to yoga and circuits. There's a little place in the New Forest and I try and get there, and Wi-Fi's not amazing, so if I ever want to just, usually it's with my Mac, because if I've got things at work I need to do but where people can't be bothering me constantly, I'll try and fit in a circuit, probably classic type A, try and fit in a circuits class, a yoga class, and quietly do my work there. That's sort of my switch off. I tried to have a holiday recently, but then I ended up running to the Wi-Fi when my kids were in surf school. But you know, I mean, there's, what's that saying? You sleep when you die? I don't know. What's red and invisible?
I don't know what's red.
No tomatoes. Oh, I mean, that's my clean one, right? I was keeping it, I'm with the lawyers, I'm keeping it clean. Failure, I suppose. I think that's probably, whether they admit it or not, that's probably what most entrepreneurs have at some point in their driving. That's very honest. That's like therapy, yeah, failure. No, I believe in no. No, not really, no. Actually, as I get older, probably if you'd asked me in my 20s, no. In fact, I really don't. I believe in, it's a bit boring. I know when I speak to the 20-something entrepreneurs, it's hard work, really. It's constant hard work. I think you do make your own luck. I know, I wish it wasn't that way. I believe in karma to an extent. When I decide that I really want something, I normally will do my best to make it happen, politely and carefully, and trying my best not to upset other people along the way. So I guess that's quite rebellious, is it? I don't know. I'm not a great one for rules when rules don't make much sense. I wish that we would all be drinking wonderful, wonderful wine that still made us feel good but didn't have all the sugar and chemicals in it. Take over the world, one bottle at a time, cutting sugar and cutting chemicals in wine with Thomson and Scott Skinny.